first one is the transmission fluid exchange, not a drain and fill, but a full machine-powered exchange that flushes every drop of old fluid out and replaces it with new. The dealer charges anywhere from $200 to $400 for this service, and they sell it as essential maintenance every 30,000 miles. But here is what the transmission itself knows. The hydraulic system in most modern automatics is designed to run on the same fluid for 100,000 miles minimum. The SAE paper on transmission fluid degradation, number 754, measured the actual breakdown rate of Dexron 6 at operating temperature. After 60,000 miles, the fluid had lost less than 12% of its viscosity. The transmission was still within its normal operating range. The flush machine does not fix anything that is not already broken. If that landed the way it was supposed to, you are already seeing the gap between what they sell and what the parts actually need. Subscribe if you want to keep catching these hidden engineering details before the service writer gets to the next line item. In the comments, write the name of the one service on this list that you have been sold before. The first one that came to mind. Here is what changes everything. The problem with those flushes is not just that they are unnecessary, it is that they can cause the exact failure they claim to prevent. When a transmission has run the same fluid for 80,000 miles, the internal seals have swelled and settled into equilibrium with that specific fluid chemistry. A machine flush forces new fluid with a different additive package through those seals under pressure. The seal material contracts, the hydraulic pressure drops, and suddenly you have a slipping transmission that needed nothing before the service. The dealership does not tell you this. The mechanic who designed those machines knew it, and the service bulletins from the transmission manufacturers quietly recommend against flushes on high-mileage units. This is the part most people miss. The second service on the list is the fuel injector cleaning. Dealers offer this as a carbon deposit removal service, usually between $150 and $300. They hook a pressurized canister of solvent to the fuel rail and run the engine until the canister is empty. The claim is that this restores lost fuel economy and smooth idle. The evidence tells a different story. The EPA's own test cycles, which measure real-world fuel economy degradation over time, show that injector fouling accounts for less than 3% of fuel economy loss in modern port-injected engines. The carbon deposits that actually matter are on the intake valves, and a fuel rail cleaner does not touch those because the solvent never reaches them in a port-injected engine. Now watch what happens. The dealership upsells you on the fuel injector cleaning, and when your fuel economy does not improve, they blame your driving habits or your spark plugs. But the real fix for intake valve carbon deposits costs about $12 in materials and 1 hour of your time. You pull the intake tube, spray a specific aerosol cleaner directly onto the valves while the engine idles, and let the carbon burn off through normal combustion. The dealer cannot charge $300 for that, so they do not offer it. They sell you the injector cleaning because it is high margin and low accountability. Notice this. The third service is the power steering fluid flush. This one is almost pure theater. Modern electric power steering systems do not use hydraulic fluid at all. The pump is an electric motor. The assist is computer-controlled, and there is no fluid reservoir under the hood. Yet dealership service writers still recommend power steering fluid flushes on vehicles that have no power steering fluid. They have a line item on the computer screen for it. They click the box, and the system generates a price, and the customer pays because the customer assumes the service writer knows what is under the hood. The dealer makes $200 on a service that physically cannot be performed because the parts do not exist on that car. Pause here. Some service writers are not malicious. They are following a script generated by the dealership management software. The software is programmed to recommend all standard maintenance services at specific mileage intervals, regardless of the vehicle's actual configuration. If your car has electric power steering, the software does not know that. It just lists the flush at 60,000 miles. The service writer is not required to check under the hood before printing the estimate. They are required to hit their upsell target. The result is a bill for something that exists only on paper. The pivot. The fourth service is the cabin air filter replacement. This one is different because the filter is a real part that does need periodic replacement. The dealer charges $50 to $80 for the part, and labor combined. The part itself costs $8 at any auto parts store. The labor takes 2 minutes. You open the glove box, squeeze the sides, pull the old filter out, slide the new one in. That is the entire procedure. The dealer mark on this service is over 600%, and they recommend it twice as often as necessary because the filter lives behind the glove box. You never see it, and you have no way to know when it was last changed. Hold on. The dealer sells the cabin air filter replacement as a health and safety service. They tell you it removes pollen, mold spores, and exhaust fumes from the cabin air. This is true. But the filter does not need replacement every 15,000 miles. In a typical suburban driving environment, a cabin air filter is still performing at 80% of its capacity at 30,000 miles. The manufacturer's recommended interval is already conservative. The dealer halves it again. They are selling you clean air you already had. That 600% markup on a part you can swap in 2 minutes is the kind of detail that changes how you read every estimate. If this is the level of breakdown you want on every service, subscribe so you never miss a single one of these hidden numbers. In the comments, tell me the most overpriced service you have ever been quoted, the one that made you stop and question the whole list. The fifth service is the engine coolant exchange. The dealer charges $250 to $350 for this. They use a machine that vacuums the old coolant from the radiator and refills with fresh 50-50 mix. The problem is not the service itself. Coolant does degrade over time. The problem is the interval. Most manufacturers specify a coolant change at 100,000 miles or 10 years. The dealer recommends it every 30,000 miles or 3 years. That is 3 times as often as necessary. The coolant in your radiator today is chemically identical to what it will be in 3 years if the system is sealed and the pH stays stable. Here is what the manual won't tell you. The real indicator for coolant degradation is not mileage. It is the color of the fluid and the presence of sediment. Fresh coolant in most vehicles is bright orange, green, or pink. As it ages, it turns brownish and translucent. You can see this through the translucent reservoir tank on most modern cars. You do not need a machine to test it. You need your eyes. If the coolant is still bright and sediment-free, replacing it is a waste of fluid and money. The coolant manufacturers themselves say this in their own technical bulletins. The dealer just does not show you those. The sixth service is the throttle body cleaning. The dealer charges $150 to $250. They spray cleaner into the throttle body while the engine runs and claim it restores idle quality and throttle response. But on modern drive-by-wire systems, the throttle body is self-cleaning. The computer cycles the throttle plate through its full range of motion every time you turn the engine off. This movement scrapes off minor deposits before they accumulate. The carbon buildup that affects idle quality does not form on the throttle body. It forms on the idle air control valve, and most modern cars do not have one. The idle is controlled by the throttle plate itself. Cleaning the throttle body on a modern car is like cleaning the outside of your oven while the inside is on fire. That is the lie. The dealer sells the throttle body cleaning because it sounds important and technical. The actual cause of rough idle in modern cars is almost always a vacuum leak from a cracked intake boot or a dirty mass airflow sensor. Both are easier to diagnose and cheaper to fix than the throttle body cleaning service. The mass airflow sensor cleaner costs $8. You spray it on the sensor wire, let it dry, and reinstall. No special tools. No dealership appointment. Look closer. The seventh service is the brake fluid flush. The dealer charges $100 to $200. Brake fluid is hygroscopic, meaning it absorbs moisture from the air over time. The moisture lowers the boiling point of the fluid, which can cause brake fade under hard braking. This is real. But the dealer recommends a flush every 2 years, regardless of driving style or climate. In a low humidity climate where the car is driven gently, brake fluid from 4 years ago still has a boiling point well above anything you will ever generate on the street. The DOT4 specification requires a dry boiling point of 446 degrees Fahrenheit. After 4 years of normal use in a dry climate, that number drops to around 350 degrees. You will never reach that temperature on a public road unless you descend a mountain pass with a fully loaded car. Here is why. The brake fluid flush is sold as a safety service. It is the most emotionally manipulative upsell on the list because it frames the customer as reckless for declining it. But the data from real-world brake testing shows that the vast majority of brake fade incidents are caused by overheated pads and rotors, not boiled fluid. The fluid is the last thing to fail in the system. The dealer knows this. They sell the flush because it takes 10 minutes, uses 50 cents worth of fluid, and generates $200 in revenue. The dealer plays the safety card because it works, and the real risk is buried in the parts you cannot see. If you want to keep seeing through these tactics and knowing exactly what your car actually needs, subscribe so you have the real data next time the estimate arrives. Drop the word flush in the comments if you have ever paid for that brake fluid service, and if you did, how much. These 7 services represent a systematic extraction of money based on fear and incomplete information. The dealership relies on the asymmetry between what you know and what they know. The transmission flush that damages seals, the fuel injector cleaning that misses the real deposits, the power steering flush on a car without power steering fluid, the cabin filter at 600% markup, the coolant change 3 times too early, the throttle body cleaning that does nothing, and the brake fluid flush sold as a safety necessity when the real risk is somewhere else. Every single one of them is pure profit disguised as prevention. If this made something click, write this in the comments. Which one of these have you been sold and paid for? The name of the service and the price you paid. That is the record. That is the evidence. The next time the service writer clicks the box on the screen, you will already know what it is worth. You carry that list in your pocket now. 7 services, 7 markups. 7 moments where the dealer assumed you would not ask the right question. The next time the estimate comes out and the total sits somewhere between $800 and $1,500 for a list of services you did not ask for, you will see the architecture underneath. You will recognize the transmission flush that the manufacturer does not require. You will spot the cabin air filter, priced at 10 times what the identical part costs in the next aisle. But knowing is not the same as doing. The old mechanic did not just know which services were unnecessary, he knew which ones were worth doing with his own hands. The cabin air filter takes 2 minutes and requires no tools. The brake fluid flush takes a piece of clear tubing, a wrench, and a jar. The mass airflow sensor cleaning takes a can of spray and a screwdriver. The coolant check takes your eyes open for 5 seconds. These are not skills, they are decisions. The dealer depends on the gap between knowing and acting. They count on the fact that the $8 part will stay on the shelf because paying $80 for installation feels easier than bending down to open a glove box. That is the real maintenance service they are selling you, the convenience of not looking. And for that convenience, you pay 600%. You do not need to become a mechanic. You need to become someone who asks one question before every service. Show me the part, show me the old one, and show me why it needed to be replaced. If the service writer cannot produce the old part, the service was not necessary. If they refuse to show it, the service was performed for the wrong reasons. If they show you a part that looks clean, the interval was too short. 7 services, 7 questions. That is all it takes to cut the average dealer maintenance bill by 60%. The next estimate will be different. You will already know.